The last can of formula was almost empty. Alara stared at the metallic glint of the bottom, a hollow pit forming in her stomach that mirrored the can's emptiness. Beside her in the high chair, 10-month-old Leo babbled happily, oblivious to the eviction notice taped to their apartment door, a stark white flag of surrender she had to pass every time she came or went. Her bank account held $17.32. Her paycheck from the diner was 3 days away, and it would not be enough. It was never enough. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. Humiliation felt like a thick cloak she had to wrap herself in just to survive. Her fingers trembled as she picked up her phone, scrolling to her older brother's contact information. She typed out the message, each word a small, sharp sting. Can you spare $50? Just until Friday. For Leo's formula. She hit send before she could lose her nerve, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The silence that followed was deafening. Minutes stretched into an hour. She knew he was probably at work, probably busy, but the lack of an immediate response felt like a judgment. The shame burned hotter. It was this feeling, this suffocating desperation, that made her answer the phone when her best friend, Chloe, called. "You're going to say no, but I'm not taking no for an answer," Chloe said, her voice a whirlwind of cheerful determination. "I have a date for you." Alara laughed, a short, bitter sound. "A date? Chloe, look at my life. I need a miracle, not a man. This guy is the miracle. Well, maybe not a miracle, but he's nice. His name is Jay. He's simple, kind, and completely down to earth. He's a friend of a cousin of a guy I work with. He's in logistics or something. No drama. Please, Alara, just one night. You need to eat a meal you didn't cook and talk to an adult about something other than rent." The mention of a meal snagged her attention. A free dinner. It was pathetic, but it was practical. "I don't have anything to wear. I can't afford a babysitter. I'm watching Leo, and you're wearing my black dress," Chloe countered, having anticipated every excuse. He suggested Mel's diner. "See, low-key, 7 o'clock. Don't be late." Alara sighed, defeated by her friend's relentless optimism and her own stark reality. Fine. One date, one meal. It was a temporary reprieve, a single deep breath before she plunged back under the crushing weight of her life. Mel's diner had sticky floors and the lingering scent of fried onions. It was familiar and comforting, a place she could have afforded on her own in a different lifetime. She saw him sitting in a corner booth, just as Chloe had described. He had dark hair, a plain gray sweater, and a quiet intensity in his eyes as he watched the street outside. He looked normal. The relief was immediate and immense. "Jay?" she asked, approaching the table. He stood up quickly, a warm, genuine smile erasing the solemn look he'd worn a moment before. "Alara, it's great to meet you." His voice was deeper than she expected, calm and steady. He was handsome in a subtle, unassuming way that put her instantly at ease. The conversation flowed more easily than she could have imagined. He asked about her, and he actually listened, his gaze never wavering. He didn't talk much about his own work, just mentioning his small logistics company and how it kept him busy. He seemed more interested in hearing about Leo, laughing when she described her son's fascination with banging a wooden spoon on a pot. "He sounds like a character," Julian said, his smile tinged with something she couldn't quite decipher. A wistfulness, perhaps. "He's my whole world," Alara admitted, the truth of it filling her with a warmth that had nothing to do with the diner's coffee. For 2 hours, she forgot about the eviction notice. She forgot about the empty can of formula. She simply felt like a woman, not just a mother, not just a survivor. When the check came, he took it without a second thought. He offered to drive her home, and she accepted, too tired to argue and too buoyed by the evening to want it to end just yet. His car was a simple, dark sedan, impeccably clean but unremarkable. It fit the man she thought he was. He pulled up to her rundown apartment building, the flickering porch light casting long shadows. He didn't comment on the peeling paint or the cracked walkway. He just turned to her, his expression serious. "I had a really nice time tonight, Alara." "Me too," she said, and she meant it. "Thank you, Jay. For dinner. For everything." She watched him drive away before turning to face her reality. The eviction notice was still there, a cruel welcome home. But as she unlocked her door, she felt a sliver of hope. A kind man existed in the world. Maybe things could get better. The next morning, Her doorbell buzzed insistently. Alara, with Leo balanced on her hip, opened it to find two delivery men standing in the hallway, surrounded by a mountain of boxes. "Delivery for Alara Vance," one of them said, checking his clipboard. "My name is Alara Quinn," she corrected, confused. "Close enough. This is the address. Where do you want it all?" She stared as they brought in box after box. Diapers. Wipes. A year's supply of the expensive, hypoallergenic formula Leo needed. Bags of groceries filled with fresh fruit, vegetables, and pantry staples. Her kitchen, bare only an hour ago, was suddenly overflowing. Tucked inside the last grocery bag was a plain white envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $5,000 and a simple, typed note, a fresh start. Her blood ran cold. There was only one person it could be. Her hands shook as she found the number Chloe had given her. He answered on the second ring. "Hello, Jay? It's Alara," she said, her voice tight with a mixture of shock and anger. "What did you do?" There was a brief pause. "I'm not sure what you mean. Don't play dumb with me," she snapped, her pride roaring back to life. "The delivery. The check. I am not a charity case. I don't need you to rescue me." "I know you don't," he said, his voice still infuriatingly calm. "I just wanted to help. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal? $5,000 is not a big deal. Who are you?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. This wasn't the behavior of a simple man from a small logistics company. This was something else entirely. "I'm just a guy who wanted to make sure you and your son were okay," he insisted. "I'm sending it all back," she declared, her voice trembling. "The money, the food, everything." "No, you won't," he said, a new note of authority in his tone. "Because Leo needs it. This isn't about your pride, Alara. It's about him. Please, just accept it." Before she could argue further, he changed the subject. "I have another proposal for you. A job. You mentioned you had a degree in business analytics, but haven't been able to use it. My company needs a consultant. Someone to look over our distribution networks and find inefficiencies. The salary is $200,000 a year." The phone almost slipped from her hand. $200,000. It was a fantasy number, a lottery winning. And he was offering it to her, a woman he'd met once in a diner. The suspicion solidified into a cold, hard certainty. This was wrong. This was a transaction. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "Because nobody does this out of the kindness of their heart. Nobody. You think you can just buy me with baby formula and a fake job?" "It's a real job," he said, a hint of frustration in his voice now. "You're qualified. Just meet me tomorrow. My office. I'll text you the address. If you still think it's fake after that, you can walk away. No strings attached." He hung up, leaving her standing in her kitchen, surrounded by a bounty she couldn't trust, with a job offer that felt like a trap. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to reject it all and cling to the tattered remnants of her independence. But then she looked at Leo, his chubby hand reaching for an apple from one of the grocery bags, and she knew she had no choice. She had to see it through. The address he sent was for Vance Tower, a gleaming skyscraper of glass and steel that dominated the city's skyline. Alara's worn-out coat felt thin and inadequate as she walked into the marble lobby, where the air itself seemed to hum with power and money. The name on the directory made her stomach plummet. Vance Industries. CEO, Julian Vance. The receptionist at the top-floor executive suite looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Jay," Alara said, the name feeling foolish on her tongue. "Mr. Vance is expecting you," the woman replied, gesturing toward a pair of massive oak doors. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her, looking out over the city that was clearly his domain. He wasn't wearing a simple sweater now. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than her car. When he turned, the kind, unassuming man from the diner was gone. In his place was a man who radiated an almost palpable aura of command. "Jay, I presume?" Alara asked, her voice laced with ice. "My name is Julian Vance," he said, his expression somber. "Please sit down." "I think I'll stand," she shot back, crossing her arms. "I want an explanation, not a performance. Who are you, and what is this game you're playing?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. He looked tired, the confident CEO facade cracking for just a moment, to reveal something more vulnerable underneath. This was the shift Alara needed to see, the fissure in his armor. Julian's mind raced. He had handled this badly. He had known, from the moment he saw her struggling to choose between 2 brands of bread at the grocery store last week, that he couldn't just approach her. He had seen the fierce pride in her eyes. So he had engineered the meeting, using a distant connection to get Chloe to set them up. He had tried to be Jay, the simple man, to get to know her without the wall of his wealth between them. But in his haste to help, he had only made things worse. "It's not a game," he said, his voice quiet. He walked over to his desk and picked up a small, silver picture frame. He held it out to her. "This is why." Alara hesitated, then took the frame. The photo was of a smiling woman and a small boy, no older than 2, with the same dark hair and serious eyes as Julian. The boy was laughing, his face a picture of pure joy. "That was my son," Julian said, his voice thick with an emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel, let alone show. His name was also Leo. The air left Alara's lungs. "He and my wife, Sarah, were in a car accident 3 years ago. She survived. He didn't." The words were stark, brutal. "It destroyed us. It destroyed me. I buried myself in work, built this empire, but none of it mattered. It was all just empty." He finally met her gaze, and his eyes were filled with a profound, aching sorrow. "When I saw you, when I heard you talk about your Leo with so much love and fierce devotion, fighting for him with everything you have, it was the first time I'd felt anything other than that emptiness in years. It wasn't pity, Alara. It was admiration, respect. I saw in you the kind of mother I always wished Sarah and I could have been for longer." He gestured around the opulent office. "All of this," he said, "is meaningless. But helping a good mother give her son a safe, stable life? That means something. That honors my son's memory in a way that another $1 billion never could. The job is real. Your skills are real. I looked you up after our date. Your academic record is exceptional. You've been overlooked and underestimated. I'm not offering you a handout. I'm offering you an opportunity you should have been given a long time ago." Alara sank into one of the leather chairs, the silver frame still clutched in her hands. The anger, the suspicion, it all dissolved, washed away by a sudden, overwhelming wave of empathy. The puzzle pieces of his behavior clicked into place, forming a picture not of manipulation, but of deep, unhealed grief. He wasn't trying to buy her. He was trying to save a small piece of himself. She looked from the photo of the lost boy to the powerful man standing brokenly before her. "I am so sorry, Julian," she whispered. And in that moment, the foundation of trust was laid. She took the job. Within a month, Alara was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. Her mind, sharp and analytical, came alive as she dove into Vance Industries' complex logistics. She found patterns others missed, streamlining routes and renegotiating contracts in ways that saved the company millions. She worked from a small but comfortable office, and Julian made sure her hours were flexible enough that she never had to miss a moment with Leo. They fell into a comfortable rhythm. They had lunch together most days, talking about work, about Leo, about everything and nothing. The professional lines began to blur, replaced by a deep and genuine friendship. He was a constant, steady presence in her life, and she found herself relying on his quiet strength. He, in turn, seemed lighter, the shadows in his eyes receding as he watched her and Leo. He'd often stop by her office just to see a new picture of her son, a soft smile touching his lips. But their growing closeness did not go unnoticed. Marcus Thorne, a senior board member whose family had been rivals of the Van Cess for generations, watched Julian with a predatory gaze. He saw Alara not as an asset, but as a vulnerability, a distraction that made Julian weak. Marcus believed the company should be colder, more ruthless, and Julian's newfound compassion was a threat to his ambitions. The attack, when it came, was swift and brutal. A multi-billion-dollar project, codenamed Odyssey, was suddenly compromised. Confidential schematics and financial projections were leaked to their biggest competitor. The company's stock plummeted, and panic erupted in the boardroom. An internal investigation was launched immediately, and the digital trail led directly to one person, Alara Quinn. The evidence was damning. The security logs showed the files had been accessed and downloaded from her workstation, using her credentials, in the middle of the night. Alara was blindsided, horrified. "I didn't do it, Julian," she pleaded, standing in his office as two security guards waited grimly by the door. "You have to believe me. I would never." Marcus Thorne stood beside Julian's desk, a look of faux sympathy on his face. "Julian, the evidence is irrefutable. We have to contain this. She needs to be terminated and handed over to the authorities. It's the only way to reassure our shareholders." Julian looked from Marcus's smug face to Alara's terrified one. He saw the panic in her eyes, but underneath it, he saw the same fierce integrity he'd admired from the very beginning. His decision was instantaneous. "Get out of my office, Marcus," Julian said, his voice dangerously low. To the guards, he added, "You're dismissed. Alara stays with me." Once they were alone, he turned to her, his expression softening. "I believe you," he said simply, "and we are going to fight this." That night, they turned his penthouse into a war room. With Leo asleep in a spare bedroom, they pored over server logs and encrypted data streams. Julian's resources and Alara's intimate knowledge of the systems she had helped design made them a formidable team. For hours, they found nothing, just the same perfect, circular evidence that pointed directly to her. "It's too clean," Alara murmured, rubbing her tired eyes. The hacker was too good. They didn't make any mistakes. "Everyone makes mistakes," Julian countered, his focus unwavering. Then she saw it. A single line of code in the access log. A timestamp that was off by a fraction of a millisecond. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible anomaly. To anyone else, it would be a system glitch. But Alara, who had written the diagnostic program for that server herself, knew it wasn't. It was the digital ghost of a remote override, a backdoor entry masked to look like her own login. "There," she whispered, her finger tracing the line on the screen. "That's how they did it. It was the key they needed." Julian's private cybersecurity team used the anomaly to unravel the entire scheme. They traced the backdoor to an offshore server, and from there, to a shell corporation, and finally, to a series of encrypted payments originating from a private account belonging to Marcus Thorne. The emergency board meeting was called for the next morning. Marcus arrived looking confident, ready to see Julian humiliated. He launched into a speech about the importance of security and the regrettable lapse in judgment that had allowed a charity case to compromise their most vital asset. Julian let him finish. Then, calmly and methodically, he projected the evidence onto the main screen for the entire board to see. The offshore server, the shell corporation, the bank transfers. Marcus's face turned ashen. His denials were weak, crumbling under the weight of the irrefutable digital proof. He was ruined. After the meeting, the adrenaline faded, leaving only a profound sense of relief. Alara and Julian stood in his empty office, the morning sun streaming through the windows. "You saved the company," Julian said, his voice full of awe. "You saved me. You believed in me," she corrected softly. "No one has ever done that before." He stepped closer, his hands coming up to cup her face. The space between them crackled with an energy that had been building for months. "The thought of losing you," he said, his voice husky, "of them taking you away. I realized something in that moment, Alara. This was never just about honoring my son. It's about you. It's always been about you. I love you." Tears welled in her eyes as the truth of her own feelings rushed to the surface. He was no longer a billionaire or a grieving father. He was just Julian, the man who saw her, the man who trusted her, the man she had fallen hopelessly in love with. "I love you too," she whispered. He closed the distance between them, and his kiss was everything she had been missing, a promise of safety, of partnership, of a future she had never dared to dream of. 1 year later, the chaos of that time felt like a distant memory. Alara stood on the terrace of their home, a beautiful house overlooking a calm, blue lake. She was no longer just an analyst. She was the vice president of operations for Vance Industries, a position she had earned through sheer talent and hard work. Leo, now a sturdy toddler, ran across the grass, his laughter echoing in the evening air. He chased after Julian, squealing with delight when Julian scooped him up and tossed him gently into the air. "Dada!" Leo cried, his little arms wrapped tightly around Julian's neck. The sight filled Alara's heart with a warmth so profound it almost hurt. This was her life now, a life of peace, security, and boundless love. Julian walked over to her, still holding Leo. He pressed a kiss to her temple. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I was just thinking about Mel's diner," she confessed with a small smile. "About how I almost didn't go. How I thought my life was over. And now," he prompted, his eyes searching hers. "And now," she said, her voice soft with emotion, "it's just beginning." He smiled and gently set a wriggling Leo down on the grass. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. He knelt down on one knee, his gaze never leaving hers. "Elara Quinn," he began, his voice steady and sure. "You and Leo are my whole world. You healed a part of me I thought was dead forever. You taught me how to live again, how to love again. I want to build a life with you, forever. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the beautiful, sparkling diamond, at the incredible man holding it out to her, at their son giggling on the lawn. Her past was a story of survival, of fighting for every scrap. But her future, she knew with absolute certainty, was a story of love. "Yes," she breathed, the word a joyful sob. "Yes, of course, yes."